Terrifying True Scary Stories, Volume 9, The Lighthouse Keeper's Log. When marine archaeologist Dr. Elena Vasquez accepted the assignment to investigate the abandoned Black Rock Lighthouse off the coast of Maine, she thought it would be a routine historical documentation project. The lighthouse had been decommissioned in 1983 after the last keeper, a man named Henry Caldwell, disappeared without a trace. For 40 years, the structure had stood empty, slowly deteriorating in the harsh Atlantic weather. Elena's job was simple: catalog any remaining artifacts, document the structure's condition, and retrieve the lighthouse keeper's logs from the Maritime Museum. It was supposed to take 3 days. She would stay in the keeper's quarters, work during daylight hours, and take the supply boat back to the mainland on the 4th morning. She arrived on a gray October afternoon, the supply boat's captain looking relieved to drop her off and leave. "I'll be back Thursday morning, 9 a.m. sharp," Captain Morrison said, his weathered face creased with concern. "You sure you want to stay out here alone? This place has a reputation." "I've heard the stories," Elena replied, shouldering her equipment bag. Missing keeper, strange lights, mysterious sounds. "Every old lighthouse has ghost stories, Captain. I'll be fine." Morrison didn't look convinced, but he nodded and pushed off from the dock. Elena watched his boat disappear into the fog, then turned to face Black Rock Lighthouse. The structure was imposing, a 60-foot tower of gray stone perched on a rocky outcrop, surrounded by nothing but churning ocean. The keeper's quarters were attached to the base, a small 2-room cottage that had once housed the men who maintained the light. Elena could hear the waves crashing against the rocks, a constant rhythmic thunder that would be her only companion for the next 3 days. The door to the keeper's quarters was unlocked, swollen with moisture but still functional. Inside, the air was stale and cold, thick with the smell of mildew and salt. Elena set up her camping equipment, arranged her documentation tools, and began her preliminary survey before the light failed completely. The keeper's quarters were remarkably preserved. Furniture remained in place, covered in dust and bird droppings. Personal effects littered the surfaces: coffee mugs, books, a pipe still resting in an ashtray. It looked as if Henry Caldwell had simply stood up one day and walked out, never to return. Elena found the logbooks in a cabinet near the radio equipment. There were dozens of them, dating back to 1947 when the lighthouse was first automated but still required a keeper for maintenance. She carefully removed the final logbook, Henry Caldwell's record from 1982 to 1983, and brought it to the small table where she'd set up her work area. As darkness fell, Elena lit her battery-powered lantern and began reading. The early entries were mundane: weather reports, maintenance notes, supply deliveries. Henry's handwriting was neat, methodical, the entries of a man who took his job seriously. But in January 1983, something changed. January 14th, 1983. Fog has been persistent for 6 days. Visibility less than 20 feet. During the 2 a.m. check, I heard something on the rocks below. Not waves. Footsteps. Heavy, deliberate. I searched with the spotlight, but found nothing. Probably seals, though I've never heard seals sound quite like that. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. She glanced at the window, but outside was only darkness and the constant sound of waves. She continued reading. January 19th, 1983. The footsteps continue every night between 2 and 3 a.m. I've searched the entire perimeter during daylight. There's nowhere for anyone to hide, and the rocks are too treacherous for approach by boat in this weather. Yet I hear them clearly. Someone walking around the base of the lighthouse, circling it repeatedly. I've begun to dread the night watch. January 23rd, 1983. I saw it tonight. Not clearly, but enough. At 2:17 a.m., during my rounds, I looked out the east window and saw a figure on the rocks. It was tall, Too tall, and its movements were wrong. It didn't walk so much as flow over the terrain, like liquid taking shape. When I shone my flashlight on it, it turned toward me. I couldn't see a face, just a darkness where a face should be. It raised one arm, too long with too many joints, and pointed at the lighthouse door. Then the fog swallowed it. I've locked every entrance and pushed furniture against the doors. I don't know what that thing is, but every instinct I have tells me not to let it inside. Elena's hands were trembling. She told herself this was just the paranoid delusions of an isolated man, but the detail in Henry's descriptions, the steady deterioration of his mental state documented in precise handwriting, it felt too authentic. January 27th, 1983. It speaks now. Through the door, through the walls, I don't know, but I hear its voice in the dead of night, asking to be let in. It says it's cold. It says it's been waiting for so long. It knows my name. It knows things about my life, about my childhood, secrets I've never told anyone. How can it know these things? I've radioed for an early relief, but the weather has made it impossible for boats to reach the lighthouse. I'm trapped here with whatever this thing is. January 30th, 1983. I haven't slept in 3 days. Every time I close my eyes, I hear it scratching at the doors, at the windows. The sound of nails on glass, on wood, on stone. During last night's 2 a.m. watch, I looked out every window. It was at all of them simultaneously. The same figure, the same impossible height, the same eyeless face pressed against the glass at every window. That's not possible. There's only one of it. I know there's only one. But I saw it at 6 different windows at the exact same moment. February 3rd, 1983. I understand now. It's not trying to get in. It's trying to show me something. Last night, it finally spoke clearly. It said, "Look down. Look at what you're standing on. Look at what holds you up." I don't know what it means, but I'm afraid to find out. February 5th, 1983. I looked. God help me, I looked. There's a crawl space beneath the keeper's quarters that I never knew existed. I found the entrance hidden behind the supply cabinet. I went down with my flashlight. The smell was overwhelming. Decay, salt water, something else I can't identify. The walls down there covered in markings, symbols I don't recognize. And in the center of that dark space, there are bones, human bones, dozens of them, arranged in patterns. This lighthouse is built on something terrible. The thing outside isn't trying to get in. It's trying to warn me about what's already here. February 7th, 1983. This will be my final entry. The thing outside was right. There is something beneath this lighthouse, something ancient, something that has been feeding on the keepers for generations. I hear it now, beneath the floorboards, scratching its way up. The figure outside stands at the door, and now I understand it's not a monster. It's the last keeper, and the one before that, and all the others who came before me. They're trying to warn me, but it's too late. It's already... The entry ended mid-sentence, the pen trailing off the page in a jagged line. Elena sat frozen, her heart pounding. She looked at the date of the final entry, February 7th, 1983. Henry Caldwell had been reported missing on February 8th, 1983, when the relief keeper arrived to find the lighthouse empty. A sound made her jump, a heavy thump from somewhere below her feet. Elena tried to rationalize it. Old building, settling foundation, water damage. But her hands were shaking as she stood up, and she couldn't ignore the fact that the sound had come from directly beneath where she was standing. She remembered Henry's words. There's a crawl space beneath the keeper's quarters that I never knew existed. Elena should have run. She should have grabbed her radio and called for emergency extraction. But she was a scientist, trained to investigate, to document, to understand. She moved to the supply cabinet that Henry had mentioned and pulled it away from the wall. There, cut into floorboards, was a small trapdoor. The thumping sound came again, louder this time. Something was down there. Something was moving. Elena's professional curiosity warred with her survival instincts. She grabbed her flashlight, her hands slick with sweat, and opened the trapdoor. The smell hit her first, overwhelming decay mixed with brine, and something acidic that burned her nostrils. She shone her light into the darkness below and saw stone steps descending into a space that shouldn't exist. The lighthouse was built on solid rock. There shouldn't be anything beneath it, but there was. Elena descended 3 steps before she saw the markings Henry had described. They covered every surface, carved deep into the stone. Symbols that hurt to look at directly, that seemed to shift and writhe in the flashlight beam. And beyond them, in the center of the chamber, were the bones. Dozens of skeletons, arranged in concentric circles, all facing inward toward a central point. And at that central point was a hole, not a natural formation, but a perfect circle cut deep into the bedrock, descending into darkness, so complete that her flashlight couldn't penetrate it. Something moved in that hole. Elena saw it rise, a shape that defied description, something that existed in too many dimensions at once, that her brain couldn't fully process. It was pale and wet, covered in appendages that weren't quite arms or legs or tentacles, but something in between. And as it emerged from that impossible hole, Elena understood with horrifying clarity what Henry had discovered. The lighthouse wasn't built to warn ships away from the rocks. It was built to mark something, to keep watch over something that had been sealed away long before recorded history. And every keeper who served here had eventually been taken, pulled down into that hole, added to the circle of bones that somehow kept the thing trapped. But now Elena was here, and the circle was nearly complete. She ran, scrambling up the stairs, slamming the trapdoor shut, dragging the cabinet back over it. But she could hear the thing behind her, moving through wood and stone as if they were water. The floor beneath her feet bulged upward, and she heard a sound like screaming stone. Elena burst out of the keeper's quarters into the night. The fog was so thick she could barely see the lighthouse tower. She ran for the dock, her only thought to get to the water, to swim if she had to, anything to get away from the lighthouse. That's when she saw them, figures in the fog, dozens of them, forming a ring around the lighthouse. They were tall and wrong, their proportions inhuman, their faces dark voids. The lighthouse keepers, all of them, trapped here, bound to this place, trying to warn her. The figure closest to her raised one too long arm and pointed. Not at her, but at the ocean. Elena looked and saw lights in the distance. A boat coming toward the lighthouse. Captain Morrison, arriving early. No, Elena whispered. Turn back. Please turn back. But the boat kept coming. And Elena understood the terrible truth. The thing beneath the lighthouse needed keepers. Not to guard it, but to feed it. And when one disappeared, another always came. She thought she was the investigator, but she was just the next sacrifice. The fog closed in. The figures drew closer. And from beneath the lighthouse, Elena heard the sound of stone breaking, of something ancient and hungry finally breaking free after 40 years of near starvation. The last thing she saw before the darkness took her was Captain Morrison's boat. Pulling up to the dock, the captain stepping out with concerned expression, calling her name, coming to investigate why she hadn't answered her radio, walking straight toward the keeper's quarters, toward the trapdoor, toward the thing that was waiting. Later, the Coast Guard would find the lighthouse empty. No sign of Dr. Elena Vasquez. No sign of Captain Morrison. Just Elena's equipment, left neatly arranged, and one item that hadn't been there before, a new logbook, open to a fresh page, with a single entry in handwriting that matched neither Elena's nor Henry Caldwell's. February 7th, 2024. This will be my final entry